Every day, it becomes more and more difficult for the Ukrainian and Western media to cover what is happening on the battlefield. Even pro-Ukrainian experts and military bloggers are no longer able to hide the truth about the failures of the armed forces of Ukraine on the battlefield. In this regard, they try to avoid discussing topics with the loss of numerous settlements by the armed forces of Ukraine, as well as daily massive missile strikes on the territory of Ukraine, which cause devastating damage not only to the infrastructure of the armed forces of Ukraine, but also to supply routes for foreign mercenaries and Ukrainian soldiers. Meanwhile, the situation in the most important sector of the front of the Special Military Operations Zone reaches its apogee. Even European analytical centers and US think tanks were forced to recognize the catastrophic situation of the armed forces of Ukraine in the Avdiivka direction of the front, where two-thirds of all clashes are now taking place. Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu also added oil to the fire. In particular, speaking in a conference call with the top military brass of the armed forces of the Russian Federation, he officially stated that the losses of the armed forces of Ukraine over the past month amounted to 23,000 soldiers killed and wounded. Moreover, over the past 30 days, the Ukrainian army has lost more than 3,000 units of heavy equipment, including German Leopard tanks, US M2 Bradley infantry fighting vehicles, HIMARS multiple launch rocket systems, and Patriot air defense systems. Sergei Shoigu also added that the situation of the Ukrainian army is so deplorable that Kiev has begun to throw its last reserves into battle, in order to prevent the front's collapse. Commenting on the words of the Russian defense minister, Western military experts recognize the fact that the armed forces of Ukraine are indeed experiencing serious problems with manpower. In particular, over the last 30 days, the Ukrainian army has been constantly forced to transfer its units from one front sector to another. As a result, the defense of the Ukrainian army began to collapse in certain sections of the front, which allowed Russian troops to take control of towns, villages, and strategically important heights. And this process is rapidly gaining momentum. The same thing happened in the Avdiivka direction of the front. In particular, when Russian troops captured a powerful fortified area of the armed forces of Ukraine on the territory of the Tsarskaya Okhota Hotel and Entertainment Complex, the Ukrainian High Military Command was forced to transfer the nationalist unit Magura from the northern flank of Avdiivka to the southern one, in order to prevent the further advance of Russian troops. As a result of this maneuver, the northern flank of the Ukrainian army's defense was significantly weakened, and Russian troops managed to capture the village of Stepovoy. Moreover, it also allowed the Russian army to advance significantly in the northern part of Avdiivka. Over the past 24 hours, Russian troops have managed to take control of 3.4 square kilometers of territory in the northern part of Avdiivka, in the sand quarry area. Thus, it can be stated that the Russian army is now advancing on the enemy in the eastern and northern parts of Avdiivka, rapidly moving towards the center of the city, simultaneously from two sides. Meanwhile, Moscow's rivals are tearing their hair about the successes of the Russian army on the battlefield. Realizing that the surrender of the Ukrainian army on the battlefield was inevitable, Britain began to call on Western countries to take decisive action. In particular, London in all seriousness stated the need to urgently send NATO expeditionary forces to Ukraine, which should take up defense on the right bank of the Dnieper, and prevent the further advance of the Russian army. Moreover, Britain also called for a strike on strategic Russian military installations in the northern regions, using the military potential of NATO and Finland in Norway. In addition, Britain has also begun to convince NATO of the need to launch a preemptive strike against Russian troops in Transnistria, and establish a no-fly zone over the western part of Ukraine. Well, my friends, if you think that these statements by Britain are empty words and a bluff in order to intimidate Russia, then you are deeply mistaken. As you know, I have repeatedly said that the successes of the Russian army on the battlefield can force the West to escalate the conflict and increase the risks of nuclear war. You must understand that the loss of the armed forces of Ukraine on the battlefield and the capitulation of the Kiev regime is not a defeat of Ukraine and the Ukrainian people, but a crushing and humiliating defeat of the West, led by the United States. The West will never be able to accept and digest such humiliation, and therefore, Vladimir Putin needs to be extremely careful. Putin should no longer prolong this conflict. The longer this conflict lasts, the more time the West and NATO have to prepare for a direct clash with Russia. Putin needs to put an end to the issue of Ukraine as soon as possible and reduce all the risks of World War III.